It's time to explore the world according to Glenn. I'm Kevin Jacobsen. Glenn Close is my favorite actress, and this show is all about exploring the career of one of the finest actors of her generation. Each episode, I'll be joined by a guest as we dive into one of Glenn's movies, TV shows, or stage productions, going chronologically through her career, discussing her performance, and assessing the project itself. And today, we are talking Glenn's performance as an opera singer in the Little Scene 1991 dramedy Meeting Venus.
Eight-time nominee Glenn Close, motherfuckers.
My guest today is one of my favorite people to chat about actresses with. They have joined me on many episodes of And the Runner-Up Is and various bonus series at this point. You've heard them discussing the 1953 Best Actress lineup as well as the 2016 lineup. But I believe we have never talked about Glenn. Correct me if I'm wrong. Welcome to the show, Eoin Daly.
Hello. Yes. I mean, we've tangentially discussed, I think maybe when our last episode talking about bridesmaids, the name Glenn was mentioned.
Well, yes, that's fair. If it's a podcast where I'm involved, Glenn will be mentioned somehow. I'll shoehorn it in somewhere, but yes, very true. Thank you so much for joining me. Very excited to learn about your Glenn origin story here. Before we talk Meeting Venus, tell me your relationship with the legendary Miss Close, and if you remember when you first saw her, and if you have a favorite performance of hers.
Yeah. So, I think my origins with Glenn, I mean, it's probably like most people of my generation is with 101 Dalmatians, just watching it as a youth. But, I think the thing that really sold me on Glenn was Damages. I mean, I would compare Damages in the career of Glenn Close to what Devil Wears Prada is for Meryl Streep, where I
Wow.
think it's a role that changed. I mean, Glenn had been working for decades, but I feel like the acclaim for Damages and just how she basically reinvented herself for an entire different generation of people is just watching Damages weekly was like the greatest thing ever.
I just love, again, I keep saying it, I love how much everybody mentions Damages when
Hmm.
I do this introduction for people because, yeah, I think that's an excellent comparison. I, in my strange, twisted mind, connected it to Hacks. Um,
Yes. Oh,
as I mentioned on the Hamlet episode, it's like a Hacks before Hacks, except I don't know if there was quite as much sexual tension going on in Damages, but
I mean, if the internet was as strong then as is now, I'm sure that the writers would have given into it for sure. And
yeah,
Rose Byrne and Glenn Close, they love each other enough that
yeah.
they would have absolutely fed into it.
I think that's absolutely true. Is Damages your favorite of hers still?
I think it toggles between that and the obvious choice of Dangerous Liaisons. Like I watch Dangerous Liaisons like once a year. It's just, I mean, you've talked about it recently. It's just,
Yep.
it's perfection. Like, it doesn't get any better than that. I mean, it's so perfect that Madonna's like, I had to borrow that dress. Like, did Glenn Close invent acting in a mirror? Maybe.
I think so.
Hmm.
Yeah. That should be a picture of like mirror acting in the actor's dictionary. It should just be Glenn side by side, the first shot of Dangerous Liaisons and the final shot.
Exactly. Yeah, that and Damages is just,
Yeah.
it's a series that I can't wait to rewatch. And your series will inspire me to go back and revisit the whole thing. And also just the kind of Rose Byrne-ness moment that is possibly we are on the precipice of,
Yeah.
which is very
Perfect timing.
related to your other series. Um,
Yeah.
So yeah, no,
It
love Glenn
all
Close.
it all connects.
It does.
The web connects us all.
Stop. I was about to say the same thing.
Anyway, on that note, let's go back to 1991, shall we? To
Hmm.
delve into Meeting Venus. Let's meet Venus. Yes, so Glenn and her casting here seems to have been one of the first things announced about the movie, which I can sort of infer was an instance of producers hoping to call attention to the film because of her name, which is probably partly why she was attached and give it some international appeal. Because this film comes from the director Istvan Jabo, the Hungarian director most famous for the film Mephisto, which won the Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film in 1981. He would later go on to direct Annette Bening to a nomination in Being Julia. Another part of this is that Jabo had experience as an opera director, and this film is kind of rooted in his experiences directing Wagner's Tannhauser at the Paris Opera in 1984. And so Glenn is playing an opera star, Karen Anderson, a big departure from her work on the farm in Sarah Plain and Tall that same year. But Meeting Venus tells the story of Zolta Zanto, played by Niels Arastrup, a Hungarian opera director who travels to Paris to conduct a telecast of Tannhauser, which will be going live via satellite to 27 countries around the world. And he soon realizes it will not be easy as there is much dysfunction going on and he's not getting paid properly. And then he meets Karen Anderson, played by Glenn, and the two of them start to develop a relationship that turns into a full-blown affair, even though Zolta is married with a child, which naturally complicates matters over time. And the film's tone is kind of dry and comedic, but mostly plays things pretty straight. It's an interesting tone that we'll probably talk about. So with all that said, Owen, I'll just say this for the audience. You're the only one of my friends on Letterboxd who had logged this and given it a star rating, which is why I felt like maybe you could lend some insight to this episode. So you are the rare person to have watched Meeting Venus multiple times. So congrats on that. But tell me your thoughts on this film and on Glenn's performance.
Yeah, I had seen this film before rewatching today. I didn't remember a single thing. I only really know this film from the poster, just from the pose that Glenn Close is giving.
Yes. Leaning back.
Exactly. Yeah, this was a fascinating is definitely too strong a word. This was an interesting experience watching this film. Where to begin? I mean, I will give the film credit. Glenn Close, her entrance, that this is like calling back to like the golden age of Hollywood star entrances. Like I feel like
Yeah.
I'm making this too big a deal, but the fact that she enters the room like fully in light, everyone is applauding her. Like it's an entrance. Like has she ever had an entrance like this in a film before?
Not that I'm thinking of right now, oddly enough. But yeah, it does. It has a very like Rosalind Russell kind of like
Hmm.
traipsing in with her robes and everything. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right.
And then like she enters and then she quickly sings opera. It's sort of
Well,
like,
lip syncs opera.
well, of course, of course. When I say sings, I'm like
Yes.
thinking of,
Yes.
the grand tradition of voice dubbing, which we have lost, but we should definitely
Bring
bring
back.
back because not everyone can sing.
Gotta get out.
Um, I mean, Glenn Close can sing, we know this, but
Yes.
opera, maybe not her.
Opera, yeah.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, it's a Glenn Close is there. The thing I find fascinating about her performance is her voice work, where I can't pinpoint where her character is from. Like there
Yeah.
is certain line readings where I'm like, are you attempting a British accent? Are you going for some sort of like again golden age Hollywood sort of like Katharine Hepburn sort of like what not continental oh what's the word?
Transatlantic.
Transatlantic sort of thing where not everything works, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of my like opening thoughts. Like it's kind of jumbled, which the film mostly is when it's not like
Yeah.
quite boring.
Right. I would say that is quite fitting. So, I mean, I'll say first off, at the risk of sounding like a Philistine, I really don't care all that much for opera. Just stylistically, it's never been my thing. I don't know how you feel about it, but like
Yeah, well,
it,
having worked in the opera industry backstage, it's just as exciting watching a film about it as it is working backstage, and that says all it needs to say.
gotcha. Yes. I do love when something is operatic, Lord knows,
Mhm.
but operas themselves don't really do much for me. So, a movie about the making of an opera, I can't say going into it, I was maybe giving it a fair shake. Wasn't really thrilled to watch this necessarily. This is actually one of the rare films of Glenn from this era that I hadn't seen before this podcast. And I can't say that I liked it all that much. I think the more it goes along, I do think it starts to really kind of embrace those more heightened emotions of an opera in a way that does hold my attention a little more. But there are times when I just find it so flat and unengaging. It doesn't really help that we have this main character here of Xanto who is so emotionally closed off. And I get very little from Neil's performance there, to be quite honest. And when the whole film is told from his perspective, that is tough. That's
Hmm.
tough. I mean, there are ways to like write an emotionally unavailable man and make it compelling. I'm thinking of like Manchester by the Sea or like even for TV like Mad Men, like Don Draper. Like there's a way to do that and also delve deeper into the psychology of a guy like that. And I don't really think this does.
Yeah, I think the film's main problem for me is it's kind of having to force itself to be mostly spoken in English, where maybe if it were
Mm,
able to be more of an internet, like a more balance where it's more international. And I think that's what makes the performance even more cold from Zoltan is just he is being forced to speak most of his dialogue in English. And while I love Niels in things like A Prophet, like 2, 3 decades later, here like he's fine, but I think he's struggling a bit. And I think
yeah.
that's kind of, I agree. I think that's the main issue. And like, I love a story about a emotionally closed off man, emotionally closed off people. Like, those stories can be fascinating because you can read a lot into it. But here, I'm just like, I don't get anything from it.
Yeah. There's a very fine line between those things. And I do think it kind of pulls its punches a little bit when it comes to maybe criticizing him too much as a character because it's like the surrogate character is of the director. So that's kind
Hmm.
of like an issue. And then I also think the sort of lightly comedic satirical elements of just the chaos of a production has been done much more effectively in cinematic history, like obviously something like Singing in the Rain or Day for
Hmm.
Night, or the list goes on, where I just don't really, I can't really even remember, having just watched it, that many memorable moments of that aspect of it. So for me, I'm just kind of left with, at least I'm trying to find my way into the characters themselves. And thankfully, we do have Glenn here, who is delivering a very good performance. I do kind of wish it was told from her perspective
Hmm.
because she's delivering a much more complex performance and given more to do emotionally, I think, even though she has much less screen time than he does. I think there's a rich story maybe that could be told here about this woman who is so focused on her work but is also keeps falling in love with her conductors, I guess, as we learn in her backstory.
Hmm.
And I think the film glances at those things and touches on it, but doesn't really seem all that interested in probing further into that.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. I think
you know,
the film's flaw is that it lightly focuses on her, where we do get insights into her sort of being like knowing she's getting into these married men relationships and knowing that she will pull herself out of it because she doesn't want to fully break down the marriage. It's an interesting sort of comparison to say something like Fatal Attraction in terms of her
I thought of that
relationship
too.
with the
Yeah.
married man and how
Mm-hmm.
there is that sense of desperation that she portrays here, but it's much more respectable. Like, I was seriously watching this, I was getting like Glenn Close. It was very much kind of a performance from a different era of film, like before Glenn Close's time. Like, I could see Eleanor Parker in something like this. I could see even Deborah Carr in something like this. I only say Eleanor Parker because of the interrupted melody of it all, in terms of
Yes.
opera. But there's something sort of not contemporary feeling about this in
Right.
like narratively, where I was just like trying to think about it a bit more, but ultimately just kind of being like, Glenn is doing her best here, and she can only do so much with a lacking script. And I agree with you. I think in terms of like behind the scenes production of like theater and film, there it's been done so much better many other times.
Yeah. And also like opening night if you want to make the direct sort of theater connection too, which I
Hmm.
happen to love. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think Glenn is meeting the requirements of the role quite well. I don't know if she's necessarily even the most perfectly cast here, to be honest. I think there may be others who could actually have even a more of a well-rounded voice, perhaps even a speaking voice and a different kind of screen presence that could maybe fit the role a little better. But
Hmm.
she does really nail the kind of tortured diva aspect of the part very well. Like that's kind of her bread and butter, and I think it plays to her strengths that she did hone in Fatal Attraction, and even the like jagged edge to a certain extent of these women who have a certain power and a gravitas, and they're maybe well respected at work even, but also a little bit of an emotional roller coaster going on beneath the surface. You know.
Yeah. I always think of Glenn Close, she's like the kind of perfect in between of the chaos that is Jessica Lange and the respectability that is Meryl Streep, where I
Mm,
almost feel like maybe Jessica in this part might have made more sense in terms of like the chaos
yeah.
that she is involved with. So
Hmm.
that's kind of when I meant to say that earlier. That's kind of where I my thoughts about Glenn Close always are. She's like the perfect in between of the two of them.
I never made that connection either, and that actually makes a lot of sense. In the I want to see more of your scale. Let's see who else you would place on the scale of, you know, Meryl
Hmm.
to Jessica. Like, where's Michelle Pfeiffer in all this? Anyway, don't want to get too down a rabbit hole.
That's
Annette
for a
Bening, of
different
course.
day.
Yeah, right. But yeah, it's like Glenn just had that reputation as being that very precise, intelligent kind of actress. And it doesn't seem like she would be like ruled by intuition or emotion as this character tends to be. But again, I think she has the emotional grounding in her that works. You know, she does have a few louder moments that feel a bit riskier that end up still playing well, like later in the film when she's on this big rant at a dinner party that reminds me of the kind of hurt and the pain that she it was channeling as Alex Forrest, that sense of betrayal, you know?
Hmm.
So I like
Yeah.
that part of it. That's where I kind of wake up a little bit when I'm watching the film, where I feel
Hmm.
like, okay, we're actually getting somewhere.
Yeah. No, exactly. Like if you compare her kind of emotional breaks in comparison to the wife role in this film, Glenn is more in control, and probably because she's acting in her native language, which I'm assuming the actress who plays Zoltan's wife isn't.
Mm, right.
Her scene is much more like a bit unhinged vocally wise, whereas Glenn brings that respectability to it. And that's just probably because of her already, like, we're like a decade into her film acting career at this stage that she kind of has developed a respectability.
Exactly. Yeah. And I will say, as I was watching the film, I was desperately waiting for her because she finally arrives about 25 minutes in. I clocked it. A true breath of fresh air. And I was very excited to hear whatever accent she was going to give. And to your point, it just is kind of vaguely European, I would say. You know, can't really place it anywhere, but I guess it's like attempting Swedish. It's hard to say, but you
Hmm.
know, solidly convincing, not all the way refined, but she definitely carries herself in a way that is very like cosmopolitan and like again like worlds apart from what she was doing in Sarah Plain and Tall just
Hmm.
maybe a few months earlier. And looking at her lip syncing scene, her lip syncing for her life, where she is launching into this aria in front of everyone. I can't say it's all the way accurate speaking wise. The timbre of her voice, it doesn't exactly sound like when she's singing that it is the same person. I know
Hmm.
that some people do have that vocally. They sound different when they're singing compared to speaking. But here it does very much sound like two different people. It did actually briefly in that first scene make me think of our previous discussion, Owen, about Florence Foster Jenkins.
Oh
And then I
yeah.
was like, what if Glenn was Florence Foster Jenkins? How fun would that have been? She would have had a ball in that.
I mean, I don't want to see a film with Glenn Close and Hugh Grant. I feel like Glenn Close would have no patience. I couldn't
Well,
believe
that's
her
true.
having patience for Hugh Grant in a way.
Okay, well, I didn't think about that part of it, but just I think she could
No, I
play
know.
up the comedy of the vocals and the
Mhm.
that part.
No,
Would have
fair
enjoyed
enough.
it.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's interesting. I got like to go back to the accent thing. The time where I really realized the accent was just at like an off, like an out of nowhere moment where Glenn utters the line "a cold lesbian."
Oh yeah.
I was like, oh, is this like? And it's at this moment where I'm like, oh, is this film queer? And then many other little moments happen later on not involving Glenn that I was like, oh, okay, I'm sort of invested in these like little off moments that add to the frustrating nature of this film where it can't really decide on what tone it wants to give.
Yeah, I can't say I really picked up on those queer themes necessarily.
There was again
Just gonna be
later.
honest.
No, it's very far and few between. There was like that one ensemble member of the opera who's like, "You promised
Yeah.
you wouldn't call me Richard. I'm Delphine," and I was like, "What is this?"
Yeah.
Or
I don't
related
know.
to like the end production scene where there's a very funny line reading of I think it's the stage manager being like, "Answer me, you silly bitch," and then the other
That was
stage
fun. I did
manager
enjoy that.
responds, "You're the silly bitch," and I was like. This is like in the last 5 minutes, but I'm like, where was this energy much earlier
Right?
on? I'm
Yeah,
invested.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think just to speak again more sort of broadly about the chaotic, like putting on a show type of thing, I think even like the rehearsal scenes are not even all that compelling to me as much as they should be. I feel like a lot of the time it feels like just like the director is letting the music speak for itself more than really even allowing the camera to even like tell a story. It's just very visually flat. I don't
Hmm.
even really get a strong sense of Xanton and his kind of his passion for this or his even his skills, you know. So it's like I'm kind of hoping as I'm watching it for a stronger perspective and like any sort of point of view on what it's actually saying about the creative process. Like you can see the bones of something here that could have been really fun and just like, that great satirical biting quality of like mentioned opening night and day for night and all these night
Hmm.
movies, I guess, but would have
Yeah.
been very compelling, showing how art is really, really tough to make, but
Hmm.
sometimes something kind of sublime happens out of it, out of all that pain and all the strife and whatnot. It's even kind of something that they tackle in Babylon, which I know is controversial for some people to hear, but I'm just saying.
Hmm.
Anyway,
Yeah.
that's kind of where the direction just doesn't really work for me, is that I feel like we don't get a sense of like what is really driving him, and we don't get a sense of what the director is even trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah. In these rehearsal scenes, I was very much being like, I wish I was watching Tar. Like just
Sure.
like
Yeah.
related in terms of like conducting of music,
Yeah.
like film wise, story wise, not related at all, but I think I like what's it? I Estevan. I don't know how to say the director's name of the um
Jabo.
Chabot just feels like he doesn't understand. Like he's just not that, and he doesn't care. And I agree. I think that just very much is felt throughout, where everything just feels so flippant and kind of disjointed. And when it reaches its conclusion, it's unsatisfying because the sort of earnestness that the Karina character played by Glenn is like, let's still put on the show, just doesn't make sense with the rest of the film that came before because we have not witnessed this great piece of art that they're wanting to produce. I don't feel as if I'm invested in the art.
Yeah, I just don't really care as I'm watching the film, and that sucks because I should, like, I am inherently interested in that as I'm sure you are as well, and I'm sure you have experience, like you mentioned,
Hmm.
doing these things, putting on these grand productions. And for me to just kind of sit there flatly watching it and not even really caring about the end result is kind of like a damning situation for a
Yeah.
film. So for me, I kind of keyed more into just the whole relationship here that forms between the two of them. And they approach the idea of having an affair. And like he admits to her, of course, that he has a wife and child. I think there's a moment there that I really enjoyed where she kind of like considers that for a beat and is just like, I have two sons, but no other commitments. Good night. First off, just the quickness of in that line delivery. It was giving me a little bit of Sandra Hüller. It was very Scandinavian, but also just in the body language too. There is that kind of like dissonance a little bit of being like a little bit coy, but wanting him to
Hmm.
kind of catch on to what signals she's sending him. And they ultimately do kiss and everything. Not that I feel any type of like super emotional investment in the two of them, but I don't know. What do you think about this relationship? Do you feel like it makes sense?
I mean,
Like, do they have chemistry?
I
Because I
think
went back and forth on this.
kind of the same. I think
Yeah.
Glenn is really bringing the sensuality to the part, like
Yes.
more than she needs to,
Right.
where I feel more invested because she's a great actor who can sort of make her partner on screen seem worth investing yourself in. And I think
Yeah.
in their scenes together, whether they are actually sexually involved or just like romantically involved, I do feel a slight bit of chemistry, but I think a lot of that is
Hmm.
coming from Glenn's ability to sort of sell this very underdeveloped relationship. Like early
Right.
on when they're running in the streets together, I was getting very much Albert Nobbs running in the streets together just because when I see Glenn
Not
Close
Albert
run,
Nobbs.
when I see Glenn Close run, I only think of one movie, and now I have two films to think of.
Wow. Well,
I will bring the
can't.
Glenn references to the
Yeah,
pod.
I can't say I expected an Albert Nobbs reference in the Meeting Venus episode, but
Hmm.
again, her web connects us all.
It does.
Yes, again, it's like she is kind of a little bit channeling the Alex Forrest energy for me of making clear how consumed she is becoming by him, and it's just kind of like exponential with each passing sequence, really. But then that's where he also gets this indication from someone, I don't remember who, that she has ruined, quote unquote, other conductors in the past, including his kind of idol mentor, Santo. And that worries him a little, and he kind of expresses some concern to her about never really being able to measure up to Santo, and very much speaking a little bit to his insecurity and his ego. And that leads to her opening up about how she loved Santo, but in a different way, and how like he taught her to be tolerant and all these things. And I think she brings a real pathos there, and the way she's opening up and very kind of empathetically making clear to him that he doesn't have to worry about him never measuring up to his predecessor. And it really is scenes like that that make me want to see this story from her perspective, because
Hmm.
I feel like, she just breathes so much life into it. And you just see this full history of this woman who is so consumed by her work, but the work is kind of like bleeding into her personal life. And it gets a little messy because the guys she tends to be with tend to be in other relationships, including married and with children. And so I just want to like see what she is like when she is in her room alone and just kind of thinking about
Hmm.
her life and her love. And we
Yeah.
don't get that.
No, I mean that's just Glenn's ability to sort of fully round out characters regardless of the size of the parts she plays. Like it's nice after a couple of years of playing much colder characters in like Fatal Attraction or Dangerous Liaisons that she gets to play much warmer here, which I enjoy watching. And yeah, I think she's just doing as much as she can. Like this isn't a bad performance from Glenn. Like that is just point blank period. I mean, Glenn has given bad performances, I'm sorry to say. But
Excuse me? What
see,
did you just say?
When I say bad, I mean fun bad. Um,
Okay, nice
if
save.
if we can't accept our favorites at their worst, we don't deserve them at their best.
No, it's true. And we'll get there. We will get there.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, it was
The
great.
audacity
It
to
was
say
great.
that
It
on
was
this
great joining
podcast.
the I know. It was great joining this podcast for the last and final time.
Yep. Sadly, you are blacklisted, but it's
Of
fine.
course. Of course, of course.
No,
But
you're
no.
fine.
No, I do I do think I agree. I think she's doing I mean, I've said it before. She's doing as much as she can with this very underwritten role that she's giving a respectable performance in the way that I only expect Glenn Close to deliver. Like, I don't think,
Yeah.
while I said maybe Jessica Lange could do this part maybe slightly better in those sort of more earnest moments, Glenn is the person that I think of being much more earnest. Like, she
Yeah.
can play a realistic person, a normal person to a certain extent. So I think she's doing as much as she can with this
Are you saying that
performance.
Jessica Lange cannot play a normal person?
I mean, define normal for Jessica Lange.
Blanche Dubois. Sorry,
Don't,
that was
but
shade.
well, you know what? No, it's okay. You've given I criticized Glenn. It's okay for you to mention like that in front of me. How dare you? Not in front of the Vivian
Yeah.
Lee stan. How dare you?
Ooh, yeah. Fair point. Would be interested to hear Jessica Lange's accent choice here.
I mean, it
Sorry.
would be
I'll
better than
stop.
her.
I'll stop. Ugh. But I love Jessica Lange. I don't know why I'm like lightly shading her. It's yeah.
Mhm.
But
I love Jessica
to
Lange
your
too.
of
I mean, I
course, of
watched all
course.
of her films last month, so
Yeah, and I'm sure that was a rocky ride at times, but
yeah.
yeah. Anyway, one scene for me that did really pop out, speaking again to what Glenn can do with a small scene, really, is when she's performing this solo concert, I think. And it's like she spots Xanto with his wife in the audience. And they kind of look at each other and like she sees like the wife is checking her watch. And there's like this strain of slight sadness there that kind of slips through as she's singing. And as we will soon learn, she wasn't expecting him to be there with his wife and also his child. And she's trying to be mature about this, but it really does pain her. Like she says at one point, I can't spend my life in hotel rooms waiting for the phone to ring. I need to work. And she wishes for him to just go because she can't bear the pain of that. I think that's a very effective scene of just like two mature adults who are grappling with what they've done, how she doesn't want to ruin his life. He doesn't really even take much responsibility in any of this, but you can really see that it's tearing her up inside. And so, even if I don't care all that much about this relationship and maybe don't always see what she sees in him, there is kind of a poignant quality that she delivers that I found quite striking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a nice moment alongside her many nice little moments where she makes an impression enough to, as you said earlier, want this film to be about her. Like maybe if this film was called Meeting Elizabeth, it would be,
Mm,
and whether it's about this used and abused woman who always finds the wrong man, maybe trying again to find the right conductor man and failing yet again, it might have been the much more interesting film to watch.
yeah, that would be my pitch.
Hmm.
That's also where he kind of starts to suffer the consequences too, a little bit, because his wife very openly confronts him in front of their child about how she knows that he's having an affair with Karen, and she's appalled by just the arrogance of him just kind of flaunting his mistress in front of her in a way and thinking like she doesn't know, like it's insulting her intelligence almost.
Hmm.
And, a very ugly scene, but very necessary because every word she says, I'm like, yeah, this is exactly right. He has no feelings. There are people in the morgue more alive than him. That is a good read. I do like
Yeah.
that.
Hmm.
He's not a very good person, and she throws him out, which leads to him kind of spiraling and trying to get Karen back. But Yeah, I respect that the film is not necessarily on his side all the time and is definitely presenting him as an incredibly flawed protagonist over times with many, many issues and a real emotional kind of numbness that makes him very difficult to connect with. But yeah, that's where I really start to become more engaged with what Niels is kind of doing in his performance too, and working in a much different frequency than before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think it's sort of after the first half where it's a bit kind of all over the place. The film does sort of find its footing towards the end in a way where it becomes a bit more focused on the story it's trying to tell. And I do agree. I think it's at this moment where, because I do enjoy Niels as a performer. Like I've enjoyed him in other things where I think the more time he has with Glenn, sort of her energy is putting itself onto him where he becomes better because of the attention that she gives to him and also just there is a slight bit of chemistry between them. Like I have to like they do have chemistry together in their
There's
scenes.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's sparkling chemistry, but
No.
yeah.
It's not Michael Douglas chemistry, but
Well,
or even John Malkovich chemistry.
I was going to say, yeah. Or Robert Redford or
Mhm.
Kevin Kline
Or Rose Byrne.
or Rose Byrne, certainly. Oh my goodness.
Mhm.
Or Andrew Day. Moving on. So there's another great scene though where she is asking him like, tell me what you're going to do after Paris, and he can't say anything. Like he just gives her nothing, and for her that kind of says everything because now she knows he is probably not going to pursue this relationship further, and you can see the moment in her eyes when it dawns on her, and it just shatters her. And hate to say it, but this is what happens when you get together with all these emotionally unavailable men who are married, and
Mhm.
these things happen.
Yeah, very fitting of unfortunately the how certain people are in the arts industry.
Well,
Sorry.
yes,
Sorry, Karen. You think she'd know from her past mistakes, but that's the character we get to know.
some of us are doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then to circle back to that meltdown at the party, it's like it kind of starts out as a toast and kind of praising him for his talents and all that, but then it kind of transitioned into a sarcastic kind of rant about how everyone should kiss his hand, and they kind of squabble in front of everybody. And that's where I will admit, as it goes on, I start to cringe a little bit just how much she starts to like really go into the emotional instability, because I think it's, even though that was kind of bubbling underneath the surface, I think it's such a big like dramatic swing into the fatal attraction territory that I'm just like, okay, I don't know if the film really lays the groundwork for that necessarily, but yeah,
Mm.
I don't know what your thoughts are on just like that, the way that she kind of is portrayed by the end to be that emotionally unstable woman.
Yeah, it almost feels like at this stage in the production of the film, Glenn went into the offices and was like, people expect something from me, and it may not make sense for the narrative, but I've got to do it the way I got to do it. And that's what this is.
And she made history, you could
Thank
say.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I don't know if she made history in any regard, unfortunately, but that's fine. We love a diva wielding her power.
We
Um,
do. We love a woman self-actualizing.
yes. And that's what this is. Not
Hmm.
really. But, by the end, of course, they finally come together and perform. But, of course, they also have this issue with the curtain that kind of forces them to just use their voices rather than really rely on any of the set decoration or anything. I think it's a decently moving sequence that, really ties things together in a way that many of these kinds of movies tend to do about the production of things, where it's like there's so much shit that goes down behind the scenes that people probably never know about, and it's nearly impossible to even mount a huge production like this.
Hmm.
But then once the audience is there and they don't have any of that context and they're just watching the art, it really does sometimes just come together in a way that you may even be surprised yourself, even if have been the one working on it.
Yeah, it very much like this kind of bare bones production they end up doing is very much like of our current times where these
Mm.
lavish sets, production elements are just sort of not slowly but surely dying, but not necessarily being what directors and the likes are wanting to give to audiences. So I guess Karina, in this moment where she's like, let's just still put on the show must go on, was very much maybe if she went into a directing career after this whole moment with this conductor, she might be the next great theater director, let's say.
Or she might be the next Lydia Tarr.
Oh,
It was right there. I had to
of
do
course, of course, of
it.
course, always.
But also, what you're saying reminds me very ironically of the new Sunset Boulevard
Mm-hmm.
with its own kind of like bare bones production.
Mm-hmm.
All ties together once again.
Yeah.
I think Glenn gets a lovely final shot of her in tears, just kind of watching from the stage. So, that's the movie. I don't really get much out of it, unfortunately, but I do think it's a really solid, nice performance. And it's kind of even, you could interpret it as a bit of a bridge between those kinds of Fatal Attraction characters to what she would do as Norma Desmond in a few
Mm-hmm.
years.
Yeah, there's something sort of I'm just looking at the shot of her at the end where based on the costume, she sort of like has a halo around her head where it almost feels like she's looking from beyond
Mm,
life at, well, we did this show. The audience love it. And just the smile on her face is quite
yeah.
angelic. But I do like this
Hmm.
final shot of Glenn, and I think again, she just knows how to do a close up. Close
Yeah.
up. It's in the name.
She There you go. She knows her angles too.
Hmm.
So there's a few other things that we could probably mention about the film, but I don't know if you want to delve too much into them. There's kind of like this running theme about the unions and how they're trying to get payments and, get fair contracts. There's also this sort of threat of a protest going on of this group that is like protesting the sponsor of the opera house or whatever that is like involved in destroying the Amazon rainforest or something.
I mean, I come from this world, so it's sort of like I can relate to it in terms of like having witnessed certain elements like this in my professional life. So yeah, it's an element of the story that doesn't end up being the central focus, sort of like expanding the story that it's giving us, but not really offering me anything interesting to take away from it by its end, I'll say.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. It's nice little authenticity points, I think, that make sense, I think, for people like yourself or others who have done these kinds of things. But don't add all that much for me as a as a outside observer.
Hmm.
And I don't really think any of the other characters really pop all that much, to be honest. There's a lot of them. It's a big ensemble, but
Yeah.
I don't really find anything from any of them.
No, I agree. Like, I'm not necessarily that familiar with any of these other names in the cast, other than J.O. Sanders. The name
Yeah.
is familiar to me, but these people aren't doing anything too memorable, which is, I guess, why, again, adding to the unremarkableness of this film.
Yeah. So that's Venus. We met Venus.
We
Any other
did.
thoughts before we move on to the release of the film?
Not really, no.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, to get into the release of Meeting Venus, the film premiered at the Venice Film Festival, where Glenn actually won the Best Actress Golden Siak Award. Not the main Volpe Cup Award, to be clear, but this is the one that is for independent film. But that was it as far as awards recognition for the film. It was released in theaters on November 15th, 1991, in New York and Los Angeles, before expanding in December. I wasn't able to find the box office data for December, but it debuted at number 14 the weekend of November 15th. Granted, it was only in 3 theaters, so, that's tough. But just to read out some of the other movies out that weekend that made more money, I always enjoy doing this. So we had Beauty and the Beast, which was also in its first week, by the way. So,
Well,
yeah, two films making history: Beauty and the Beast and Meeting Venus. Um, yeah. Plus, we had The Fisher King, Frankie and Johnny, House Party 2, Strictly Business, Highlander 2, The Quickening,
Mm.
Other People's Money, Billy Bathgate, Little Man Tate, The People Under the Stairs, All I Want for Christmas, Curly Sue, and the number one movie at the box office that weekend, Cape Fear.
Oh, love me some Cape Fear.
Yep. So, but in the end, Meeting Venus made about $1 million. Barely made a dent, even though it was released by Warner Brothers, and it went nowhere else that award season. So, yeah, I mean, any thoughts on why you think it didn't really connect with at least American audiences? I guess it connected at Venice, but that was about it.
I mean, I think we've talked enough about it, is that there's just nothing really remarkable about it. It's a, I guess, a respectively made film. Like, it's not awful to look at. It's just not memorable in any way other than Glenn being just charismatic as a screen performer.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would just kind of say ditto, just like what we talked about when we were analyzing the film. That is why it didn't connect, is that the film itself isn't really special in any particular way. And I feel like the hook for American audiences would be seeing Glenn Close in something interesting. But even at that, it doesn't really do all that much for her. Like, she obviously puts in the work, but there's not a lot that audiences probably took away from it necessarily, other than like, oh, that was cute, and then didn't really talk about it on the way home in their car.
Hmm.
You know?
Yeah. Hmm. I mean, it's certainly a film that we don't get anymore, where we
Yeah,
like
sure.
a studio like Warner Brothers isn't releasing a film like Meeting Venus anymore, which is a sad thing to think about, because we need our mediocre films just as much as we need our truly amazing films.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I don't know what would it even be, like Fathom Events would would do. Meeting Venus. I don't know what studio would take a risk on a movie like this.
I don't think any would. I think it's a film that just doesn't get made anymore.
Yeah. What if it was a TV show? Then you could flesh things out more. How about that?
Every
Put it on
epi
Amazon Prime.
every episode is Meeting Venus colon the character in the opera.
Yes, exactly. Hey, free
Hmm.
idea.
Hmm.
Any studio executives listening? Maybe get a good sharp perspective on it. I'm thinking again of like Amy Sherman Palladino type, you know?
Mm.
I think you could make something out of that.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all I have on the release. It makes a lot of sense to me that it didn't really connect. Having now seen the film, it makes sense to me that it doesn't really exist and is not even remembered as much as her cameo in Hook from 1991, which is one scene. So,
Hmm. Yeah, it's certainly, when you look at Hook and Sarah Playing Tall, the sort of least memorable title of this film year for her.
certainly, yes. But let's get to our last segment where we are going to rate Glenn's performance on a very specific scale. Thinking about her performance and where this sits within her career, would you say this is for her ready for her close up, one of her best performances? Is it low Glenergy, not one of your favorites, or close but no cigar, somewhere in the middle?
I I don't, it's hard because it's not one, I mean, I guess it's low Glenergy, but somewhere in between low Glenergy in and close but no cigar, but not high enough to be close but no cigar. So I'm gonna say low Glenergy,
Yeah,
where she's good, she's respectable. It's just, it's stuff we've seen from her before. It's nothing, it's not offering anything new in terms of like what Glenn Close is capable of. And as you said earlier, it's sort of like a transitional film in terms of like future parts she play and then parts that she's played before. So yeah, I guess low energy.
yeah. This is where I maybe bring back what Gordon and I talked about on the Stone Boy and something about Amelia episode, which was we kind of invented Glenn Farr as like somewhere in between Close but No Cigar and Low Glenergy. So
Yeah.
I think perhaps we can invoke that again because that's kind of where I'm feeling. I would also admittedly put her in Low Glenergy, even though she is doing very good work. I just feel like as a character, it doesn't really pop very much. It's not going to be one that we look back on being like, that was a highlight of her career by any means. Not that
Yeah.
she's bad in it. It's just kind of lays there at the end of the day. It doesn't really even move me as a huge stan of hers. I don't feel particularly moved by the performance.
Yeah.
Like, there are individual moments, but on the whole, it's fine.
Yeah. Glenn Close but No Cigar. Sorry.
Okay.
Um,
Well, on that note, Owen, thank you so much for joining me. This was more fun than I expected it to be.
no worries. Thank you for inviting me on to discuss this film that I have seen twice, maybe more than anybody else in this entire world.
Yeah,
I've watched it twice, so other people don't necessarily have to.
exactly. You've probably seen it more times than Glenn has.
And somehow this isn't the worst film that I've ever watched for any of your podcasts.
Okay, wait, now I'm thinking about what that would be. What is that? What is it?
Well,
Is it The Moon is Blue?
I mean, I'm still traumatized by Lily, so
Oh, Lily, of course.
hmm
Of course.
of course.
Leslie Caron. What if she was in this?
I would I think she could have I mean she would have definitely given me much more European.
Well, yes, certainly. Wow. Yes. But anyway, this truly was a blast. I always enjoy our conversations. Where could people find more of you on the internet if you wish for them to find you?
I mean, if you wish to find me on the internet, you can find me across kind of all social medias at Own Daily, discussing film as this podcast is posting. I'm starting a deep dive into the work of Sissy Spacek, another
Ugh.
great actress of the 1980s, particularly 1982, which is a banner year for many actresses, I'm realizing as I explore actresses' work this year. I mean, very much a banner year for Glenn as well, as you've discussed. Yeah, so you can find me across all social medias talking about actors on other podcasts. I've guested on many other podcasts talking about film. I'm just passionate about it.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, thank you all so much for listening. You could find me at Kevin_Jacobsen on Twitter and Instagram, just Kevin Jacobsen, no underscore on Blue Sky. You can listen to my Oscar themed podcast, And the Runner Up Is, for coverage of every single Best Actress race, including 2 with Owen here. And you can hear Owen talking about movies like Lily and The Moon is Blue alongside movies like Elle and Jackie. So there you go. That's the nature of Best Actress. But yeah, that's And the Runner Up Is on all platforms. And to keep up with The Road According to Glenn on social, follow The Glenn Pod. And rate, review, and follow on all podcast platforms. And with that, I will bid you all adieu.